they postponed the decision of Talking News. I think that was a wise decision. There was so much community opposition.
To the Park Mobile.
Yeah. I mean, you know,
Did it start?
Have we started? Yes. Hello, this is a meeting of the Dobbs Ferry Zoning Board of Appeals, and I am Jeremy Gutman, filling in tonight for our chairman, Peter Hoffman, who's away. And we also have, in addition to Mr. Gombos, who is next to me, another of the board members, Joe Capasso, is appearing remotely tonight, which we've been told is permissible these days. And so we have one application to consider tonight. Is the applicant here?
Should be Miles King.
Okay. So this concerns construction of a new fence at 72 Colonial. And the issue that has been appealed is a denial. Oh, hello. A denial of an application to build a front yard fence. And the building inspector found that the maximum front yard fence height under the zoning rules is 4 feet and shall be no greater than 60% opacity. The proposed fence height in the front yard is 6 feet, thus requiring a variance for 2 feet in the front yard. So who will be heard on this application?
Me. Am I on?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to share the screen here. I think it always takes me a second for some reason to get the screen sharing properly. Where's my? Is it? Can you see?
No, we're only seeing you, not what's on your
Oh,
screen.
okay. Wait. Oh, show all windows. That's nice. What? Evan, can you help me here a second?
Yeah.
Why can't I get my the PDF running? It's open. Sorry. Luckily, we're the only ones. What? Usually, it's in the window here. The PDF. But it's down there, open. So it should be. Let me see. Share. Oh, that's it. Sorry.
Oh, you didn't scroll down.
So is something. Okay, now you see me, don't you?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You see
Got
not
it.
me. Okay, so this is the site at 72 Colonial Avenue. As you may know it, the Colonial Springs Pool is right across the street here. This is, this is the front of the house. I mean, in terms of the, architecture and where they enter the house. This is all street frontage along Colonial here. This is the street frontage directly across from Colonial Springs Pool, and it wraps around. And there is a funny little anomaly here. There's this tiny little, who knows how this happened historically, a little triangle here that is the adjacent property for whatever reason. So that's technically not, and sorry, I should advance a little bit. This is sort of a design drawing showing what we're proposing. We're putting in a new retaining wall here. We're raising this lawn, putting impervious paving here. This zone right here is the part in question. And since this is kind of a design drawing, I'll look forward to the accurate construction drawing. This is Let's go on around here. Just going to zoom in a little bit. I should have just come down there. keep you company since I'm the only one. So this is the zone in question here. This is the 6-foot fence that is on the street frontage. I wouldn't term it the front yard, but it's the street frontage. And then there's this little return to a new retaining wall we're putting in here. This is a new retaining wall, stone retaining wall here. Again, this is the 6-foot part in question. This is that funny little triangle that I was telling you about. That's actually the adjacent property. So is not part of the variance request. And of course, as you all know, the deer don't pay much attention to our zoning regulations in terms of fence height. Hence the need for a 6-foot fence here, which is essentially going to be enclosing their backyard. They want to make it more functional and keep the deer out and so forth. And really, that's it. That's the and you know, if you look at the entirety of the fence and the entirety of the street frontage, it's really only a small portion of the fence that is out of compliance with the zoning regulations for fence height. Oh, and I'll forward a bit more here. Oh, let's turn that now. This is a section through the site. You can see the little retaining wall that we're raising. This is the 6-foot fence, and this section really sort of shows that portion of the fence that we're requesting the variance for. This is the curb at Colonial Avenue, and this is the fence that we're proposing right here. This is the 6-foot fence. This is a fence at the top of this wall, which is not, you know, that lower fence, just at the guardrail height. It's a different gate within the property, actually.
Well, Mr. Kane, the real question for us is why is it a hardship for you to build within the code and use a 4-foot fence?
Well, it's the deer, you know, it's the deer. It's the same story all over Westchester. I mean, it's you know, use a 4-foot fence and you have deer invading your property. And it's really, again, only that portion, this small portion here. And I'm aware of other certainly there are other precedents where people have put 6-foot fences in the forward part of their property. The problem is here, there's no, you know, this is the only way you have, this is the front yard, really. This is the side yard, this is the rear yard. Because of the configuration of the property, there's no way to enclose any portion of the backyard and keep it, you know, the sort of building departments interpreted this all as front yard. That's really the crux of the problem, because all of this is not unfenced. There's no fence anywhere here. It's really only this small portion. And if you were to pull it back here, you'd be chopping the rear yard in half. And then having no opportunity to, you know, enclose the property from invading deer and dogs. I mean, there's a dog issue as well. I mean, not invading dogs, but keeping the dog in. And also, I should point out, I mean, this is set back here, and there's going to be some new screening and planting, and this is all going to be re-landscaped. And actually, I'll just forward it here to the photo. Some of these aren't pertinent, sort of more for the architectural review board. This is looking up from the. Darn it, why doesn't it not let me zoom out? It's strange. Bizarre. It's bouncing back. Anyway, fit screen, fit width. Anyway, this is going up the side of Colonial Avenue. This is the area in question where the fence is going to be back here and just coming off of this wall and coming along this area. This is exactly the zone where that 6-foot fence will be up above this this grade, and then we're building up this grade back here with a stone wall.
And I believe you were saying something about the plan includes landscaping in that area?
Yeah, I mean, I can go back. It's being extensively re-landscaped. So all of this will be, redone, and we're taking out some of these Norway maples, keeping this tree back here. And this is as you work your way up Colonial Avenue. It's really quite extensive landscaping project, fixing a lot of this this problem that has actually existed for a number of years. And this is working your way up around here. All of this will be redone. It'll improve the sort of visibility in the road, from the road going around this corner. All this will be taken down, these big sort of overgrown hedges. And then this is the part directly across from Colonial Springs. And again, there's not going to be any fence along all this street frontage. There'll be no fencing at all. It's really only that portion to enclose the backyard, which, given the reality of this property, the way the road wraps around, there's no other way to enclose the backyard, and they should be able to do that to prevent the deer from entering, as many people do. There's really no other way to, just again, with the configuration of the property relative to the road, it's all street frontage. Not all street frontage, but a lot of it is street frontage. And it's not the front yard. Again, I don't know, I would make a distinction between street frontage, but not the front yard of this house. Just going back up to the map again.
Mr. Kane,
Yeah,
so just, there is, the deer issue is prevalent throughout the village. The 6-foot height
exactly.
not being permitted in a street frontage, which is the front yard in most cases, is a restriction throughout the village. Is there anything that would be particularly unique about this particular case where an exception should be made, rather than maybe somebody proposing to the village that 6-foot fencing should be done throughout? Why would there be an exception for this particular house?
This is the front yard, so we don't want to, have a fence at the front yard. This is the side yard. This is the rear yard, effectively. There's no other way to, that you'd be precluding them from enclosing any of their rear yard. I mean, this is the area where, there's not, I mean, putting a fence to be able to, it's just a peculiarity of this particular property. So you wouldn't be setting any precedent for, properties throughout and I know there's somewhere a 6-foot fence up, up towards the front of the house. But this is, we're not proposing a 6-foot fence around the perimeter of the property, which would obviously be oppressive and out of character with the neighborhood and so forth. And this is going to be screened with new planting here. So it really, I mean, there's really no way to, dividing the children's playground, backyard for playing and so forth would seem a little, I don't know. Again, it's just much
that isn't right up to the street, that starts at some point further back, and because it is sort of a standard issue that if we grant an application for you, it becomes a precedent, and it's hard to explain to the next person why they can't also put a fence right along the property line at the street.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, again, it's just the peculiarity of this property. I think, precedents work where they're, this property.
Actually, Mr. Kane, we're not hearing you very well. I don't know if you're speaking right into a microphone.
I don't know. He's setting on it. And anyway, yeah, no, I just think again, as is the case with many variances, it's because of the particularity of a particular property. And, if this was a standard 100 by 50 foot lot and you were proposing putting a fence in front of it, yeah, that would be a real problem because you have so many rectangular lots and people would then say, gee, you let Mr. Smith do it, you should let me do it. But this is not the case here. I can't see anyone saying this is a precedent that applies, unless it was very, very similar situation. But there certainly aren't many situations like this where your entire,
So it's a little hard to see, me at least, to see your screen clearly in terms of the detail. So if I look at my drawing, sheet L100, and I look at the area where you have the car parked, and then there's the lawn area, and then there's the sign sort of near 305 Palisade, where you have the 6-foot fence, deer fence and gate.
here. That's the 6-foot fence and gate. There's a
Yeah.
gate here. Yeah.
That does, while not rectangular in shape, it does face the street, it does face the community, and it does, unless you're talking about something different that I'm not seeing, looking at your screen, it does look, it may not be rectangular, but it is the front.
Well, I thought you were talking about where the gate is. That's here? You see my cursor, right?
I cannot see, yes, now I can see your cursor. So it's
Yeah.
that area going from where you are over to
That's
the
the
parking
gate.
area.
And that you pass through this gate into this fenced zone. I'm not sure what you're saying about the gate relative to the front,
Is he talking about this area?
unless there's a misunderstanding about where the gate is.
I mean, on your drawing, there's a car in a,
Right here.
you know,
Cul-de-sac, sort of.
yeah, is that, I guess, where's the fence in relation to that?
I just want to clarify, you can see the little hand thing, right? The little cursor moving
This one's
on the screen.
round like that. So this is the front, this is frontage. So past this plane, this is the 6-foot fence there.
And what about this 6-foot fence?
That's fine because it's not on the street. This is the
So
frontage.
this is Colonial Avenue.
Right.
along-
That's considered the back. So it would be right here, this part, they're looking for the variance for.
Just that portion that I was pointing
If you
out.
take like that straight up, line like that.
And it is, and there it is, of course,
What is the-
11 feet 6 back from the street at that, that critical zone here with all the screening and planting and so forth. And then there's the retaining wall behind it, and then there's the yard to sort of have a functional lawn playground area for the children and so forth.
So can you point where the new gate is going to be?
Okay, the gate, the gate is way, sorry if that was confusing. The gate is way up here. So way back from the street. I mean, this is the front of the house. If you're thinking about the front house in a conventional way with the front entry of the house, this is the front of the house here. This is street frontage, but not the front of the house in any respect. Despite the fact that there might be a mailbox there. This is the front of the house. This is the rear of the house. And again, this property wraps around it. It is sort of an unusual configuration. And it's just to be allowed to enclose one portion of the property, because I don't think it's appropriate to try to do it on this side of the house or this side of the house or this side of the house. This is the front of the house. So you're left with one quadrant of the property that is sort of the rational property to enclose with the deer fencing and bisecting it. This doesn't seem, that would be, just, really destroy the functionality of this part of the property.
Well, I guess let me try to articulate what I think may be the distinction of this property. And by saying this, I'm not saying I agree it's enough of a distinction, but I just want to see if this is, I guess, what might apply to this. What's unusual about this property is that just because of the way Colonial curves at that particular point, unlike most properties in Dobbs Ferry, there's not a clear front yard. The part that faces the street really isn't what appears to the eye like a front of a house, and
Right.
and the house is situated so that the what is architecturally the front of the house
Right.
is not facing the street at all. It's facing side of the house. Is that basically it?
That's exactly correct. Yeah. That's the. And again, this is all.
Definition
No.
of our frontage
No
for
fence.
our code.
Yes.
There's the property boundary of a lot abutting a public street, the front lot line. On lots with multiple street fronts, the frontage shall include the length of the lot abutting all such streets. So that's how he gets the front on both sides there.
Well, I think it's a bit of a semantic. I mean, I certainly concur. It is street frontage. There's no question about that.
So I don't understand then the argument you're making, Mr. Niles, not Niles, because
Okay.
it is by definition, you have multiple fronts. And by definition, fronts are limited to 6. I mean, look, can't
That's
be
why
6.
we're asking where before you.
Right, we're asking for this variance.
And not the architecture review board.
I guess I am not persuaded so far, just to be honest about it. And
Well, again, I don't know, you're not going to close your front. I mean, people could, I suppose, but it wouldn't be very pleasant to enclose the front yard, your front of your house. And
Right.
it wouldn't serve the function that the client desires. And this is the rear of the rear yard of the house.
But you still have a 4-foot fence, which still provides separation and privacy. You think the extra 2 feet are going to keep the deer out? They may or may not.
Yeah, it really does make a difference. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, this is a common thing that everyone sort of realizes, I mean, it really is. 6 feet keeps the deer out, 4 feet does not. It's no question about it. I mean, the fence across the way at Colonial Springs, which we've had been some discussion for years about increasing the height of that fence because the deer pop over at the 4-foot fence very easily. And that, of course, would mean asking for a variance for putting a fence around the pool at 6 feet high to keep the deer from pooping in the pool, which is not anyway, getting sidetracked, but still. And that's the issue. This is all, again, this is not,
Yeah, I mean, I think I am a little sympathetic because I do think it's unusual, an unusual way that the house is situated and the way there's more frontage than a typical house just because of the shape of the street. But I believe the detriment to the community that the 4-foot rule in the code is addressing is just that the look of a sort of foreboding fence that keeps everything out, including deer, is not a look that we want right on the street. And the truth is, a lot of houses might prefer to have a fence that would keep deer out of their front yard as well as their backyard. And our current code doesn't let them do that, and they have to come up with other ways to,
Right.
I have to do this myself. I mean, you have to use deer repellent or plant things that they don't like. I think that there's not enough of a reason to make an exception.
I guess I would say, just based on your words, that people enclose the backyard of their house, and this is the backyard, I mean, it is a small portion here and it's screened. This is a huge expanse of street frontage. It's going to be open and re-landscaped, and this is just not I can't agree with your sort of characterization of this as it's somehow oppressive, or this small portion here of 6-foot fence, which looks like this, at that portion behind planting and screening, given the fact that this entire yard is going to be open and visually no 4-foot fence, which I wouldn't agree with either, putting a 4-foot fence in front of your property, all the way along, a property. But this is functionally, you can't have a house and insist there's no rear yard. I mean, it just doesn't seem like a reasonable position. You're saying this is front, this is front, this is front, this is front.
Could I just ask, well, first of all, were notices sent out to all the neighbors?
Yeah.
And
for all 3 boards.
is there anyone else attending remotely? There's no one in the in Village Hall in our boardroom other than, but is there anyone who
I thought you heard anyone's hand isn't raised or anything. I thought that one of either Robert or one of the owners was going to attend tonight is remotely.
Christine, is anybody raising their hand? I think Niall still has his hand up.
Oh, I had my my little hand figure there up.
In the Q&A, the property owner has written that they're on and would like to speak.
Oh,
Sorry, it took me that long to figure out how to do it. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I thought you just emailed me that you were going to attend, so I was puzzled.
We're only 2.5 years into this, but
Yeah.
I'll eventually get it figured out.
Same problem.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely happy to answer questions, but I concur obviously with what Niall has said. I mean, the property is just very unusually shaped, and essentially, we've never measured it, but it'd be a fun exercise maybe. But we end up having, roughly, if you look at the survey, half of the property boundary is fronting the street because of the way the street curves. And if there's really no other place to fence in a yard for children to play, for dogs to run around in, and so forth, as Niall pointed out, that side yard really fronting Colonial would be silly and inappropriate, and I would agree that would look terrible. Similarly, what's the front yard, if you put a fence there, it would, I mean, it might be hard to visualize here, but it would, I think, look very out of character. Whereas it may have been hard to tell from the photos, but when you look at this piece that's fronting the street and the little segment in question, it's over 10 feet back from the street. It's going to be re-landscaped with plantings and stuff that will hopefully address the erosion problem that exists today. And I don't think it would look foreboding or oppressive or anything like that. I mean, we wouldn't want that if that were the case. And it's really, there's sort of no other place where one could fence in the yard. One way of looking at the property is that there is no back. And this is the closest we can come to that.
Sure. I understand your point about having a space where your dog could run free, your children could play free. The 4-foot fence does accomplish that. Is there a reason other than to hopefully keep deer out for the extra 2 feet?
Yeah, it's the deer. I'm not worried about our girls jumping the fence
Or
or
your dog jumping the fence? Right.
it's
So,
the
but
deer.
really,
Right?
that, and I guess that's where the argument is tough to differentiate your property from every other property. It's a village-wide, it's county-wide, it's a statewide issue. The fact that deer have greatly changed what people feel comfortable planting because they are able to escape what we try to do to restrict their entry, and they are affecting the landscaping of everybody's property. So I don't see enough of a reason. And you know, if you're lucky, a property, a house with 360 openness and a lot of space on all sides is a blessing. And I don't understand though the necessity to differentiate this house and provide the additional 2-foot high area in an area which by code doesn't permit it.
Well, I guess a couple of thoughts. One, we're not, I mean, we are going to do a lot of planting, but the main concern with the deer is the fact that one of the main things they carry around with them is ticks, and we don't want more ticks in the yard either. But I guess sort of going back to the point Niall made, a standard rectangular lot has a backyard that can be fenced in and with a 6-foot fence that will keep the deer out. And this one, simply doesn't. And you can, have an opinion as to whether the large amount of street frontage is a positive or negative thing, and maybe it's a little of both. But if we're not able to put a 6-foot fence on this small portion, then effectively we don't have the ability to fence in a portion of our yard the way the vast majority of other homes in Dobbs do.
Joe, do you have any comments you want to make, or?
Yeah, just one question. Niall, earlier in his presentation, now you were referring to an ability as a matter of right to potentially put a 6-foot fence, but you were suggesting that would effectively cut what you're calling the backyard in half. And my question is just for
Right.
for my colleagues and for Mr. Romer, the building inspector, is Niall's interpretation correct? Said another way, is there a way to reconfigure this such that the applicant could put a 6-foot fence in without needing a variance? I just don't know the answer to that question.
Well, if it, bisected the yard, right?
But I guess my question is that even permitted? Would that be permitted? What's the distinction there? Aren't you still fronting the street? I don't understand why.
Well, because you're back from the. That for sure people have done. Put 6-foot fences. Again, coming up their backyard, the side yard, and then returning. If you imagine this is a rectangular yard, and this really is the front yard, then yeah, this
Right.
you can do. Right? I know I certainly know families who have done that. No question about that.
Is the distinction just the distance back from the street, Niall? Do you know
Well,
anyone?
Well, there's the front yard setback, right? And then there's also the, alignment with the front of the house, whether or not that's set back further than the 25-foot setback or not. It's aligning with the front of the house. Yeah, I don't know. Am I be clear? You know, I mean, I know a house right up in Bel Air who's done that, has the fence coming around and wraps around right to the corner of their house. In fact, I think it's actually in front of the house, but
You know, I'm sorry, we're not hearing you very clearly. If you could just.
yeah,
speak
sorry,
in-
I guess, yeah, so again, I think that, you know, again, it's a strange hypothetical because we don't want to bisect what is functionally the rear yard, but a fence like that, if you can see my cursor, would be permitted, is my understanding, but as of right, at 6 feet. But that's not a practical solution in this case, to sort of bisect the rear yard.
I'm just gonna say,
I mean, the building inspector should, yeah, I mean, who's on the phone anybody on the phone, on the Zoom? Is Dan on the Zoom? I don't see.
all right, is there a motion to close the hearing?
Motion to close?
I'll second. Um, I've sort of reluctantly come around from, I really don't like the idea of this fence, but I do appreciate the fact that that there isn't a typical backyard, and if there were a typical backyard, this wouldn't be an issue. Actually, you know, my one thought though is, I mean, have you considered a way to fence in part of to accomplish this? I mean, because I guess we're sort of making it sound like there's bisecting the backyard, and the only alternative is putting it right at the street. I guess my question is there no other solution where you have a fence or, you know, some other sort of deer barrier, even you know, possibly, you know, plants that they can't easily get through, you know, so as to avoid this problem?
I don't know, my experience with deers, they're pretty darn tenacious, you know, as far as any kind of planting screening. I mean, but I don't know. I mean, I suppose it, you know, could be set back a bit more from the street. I mean, this is 11 feet as it is. I think 11'6". Yeah, 11'6" from the curb, I should say.
Let me just throw this out because as you can see, I'm wavering. Would you consider letting us keep this open and going back to the drawing board, so to speak, and you know, seeing if you can come up with something that you know, that would move the barrier away from the street frontage, and you know, because the real issue is that's a look that we haven't allowed anywhere else in Dobbs Ferry, and you know, as you can see, we're reluctant to allow it here, even though, you know, I do recognize it's an unusual property. But if, you know, it's up to you. You could ask us to rule tonight, and we will. But I wanted to give you that option.
Well, I mean, I guess with the sort of vagary, that's an odd. I mean, it's hard to, you know, if, I mean, honestly, if you said, you know, set it back another 4 feet or something, then, you know, or something a little more quantifiable. Because we, you you know, I mean, we looked at making this 4 feet and you realize that's just, that, you know, it makes it just because the deer will definitely jump over a fence that high, and then you're putting in all this 6-foot fence for no reason because you have an opening. It's like having the opening in your insulated wall or something. It makes it all non-functional. I do think, you know, we intentionally puts, you know, planting screening in this zone. I mean, it's going to be far, far nicer than it is now, that's for sure.
I see where you have your 72-inch black iron deer fence. And I guess the question I can tell from your drawing is, does the fence turn and go back to a house or to a property so that there is like literally a walled off area in that area?
Well, I can go to the elevation in a minute, but this is a retaining wall along here.
Right.
And
But in order to prevent the deer from entering, you'd have to at some point bring your fence or a wall back to the building line or to the building in order to create your box.
I understand anyway. I mean, are you going back to this notion of sort of bisecting the?
Comes all along here. It comes here. This is a really high retaining wall here.
Right.
And then they pick it up right here to the house.
And what on this side?
It comes around to, no,
So I can't see how he's created.
right, it doesn't seal the house.
Well, this is sure here.
No.
What's the sense of the 6 feet here if I could get it over here?
This is the barrier of the.
I guess this is the problem with the zoom and the lack of clarity of the drawing. I can't see a return on the fence on the side that goes
In the front now,
the front.
by the driveway where you have the car, no, the other side. Come down, right where the wood
Oh,
deck
right.
is. You see the
back-
wood
okay,
deck?
wood deck, yeah, and this is a, look at that elevation again, but this is a retaining, these are low retaining wall and high retaining wall, all of which would preclude the deer from getting, you know, down into the yard. And this is the leg of the fence that closes off that gap.
Yeah, see, it's impossible to follow whatever you're pointing on the screen. It looks to me at that point towards where the car is, with the retaining wall stops and there's a gap. But again, it's hard to, this is sort of, you know, a zoom shortcoming. Yeah, you,
Do you have a photo of that area?
Yeah, I think one of those photos, Niall, might show the retaining wall sort of from the street level.
Yeah. There. Oh, okay, there we go. Now we're getting, I couldn't zoom out for a while for some reason. I don't know why.
And you can see it a little bit there, right beyond that climbing dome. It's in the distance, but yeah, there you go.
But this is, keep in mind, this is being rebuilt, this retaining wall, but it's similar kind of configuration. And then the fence in question again is back here and then makes a little dog leg, returns to this retaining wall to close that gap. And then it comes
I
here.
think what Bruce is asking is what, like, can't the deer just hop down from that retaining wall? Is that what you?
that, and I don't see where the retaining wall on the side by where the car is returns to close off the entryway. I mean, it looks like there's a path.
Well, this is the elevation, which maybe is more functional, useful.
That's good.
Because this is the deer fence, this is the wall. This is the upper wall with 3 foot. I can't imagine the deer would ever jump over the 3-foot fence and plunge down into the yard. That would be one athletic deer. Not to say it wouldn't happen, but it's very unlikely. God damn it, this does have its drawbacks. There's no question about that. I can't even. But you see right there, that's the area in question you're talking about, I gather.
I think so.
Right there.
Guess we closed the hearing. But we
Yeah,
didn't vote on
well,
it,
we didn't vote to close.
Which is why we're able to continue to talk.
Right. All right, all in favor of closing the hearing? I can't see Joe's hand.
Yeah, I'm in favor of closing it.
Um, Is there a motion?
I'm gonna phrase the motion in the negative. So a motion to deny the applicant's request for this variance.
All in favor? Actually, Joe,
Joe, I
I may
can't.
have to speak so we can,
You could stop sharing the screen, Niles.
Yeah, I agree with the motion. I vote in favor of denial.
it's unanimous. I voted in favor of the motion also. So we're sorry. I hope you can come up with a solution that doesn't require a variance or possibly requires a different variance. So there's no other items on our agenda, so we will adjourn. I believe there is no meeting in August, so our next meeting, is that correct, Valerie?
No, you don't have a meeting
Oh.
in August. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that for the record, you are authorizing me to write the resolution of denial. And based on the conversation and the board's thoughts on the matter, a lot of it revolves around the uniqueness of the situation which the applicant has not been able to prove.
Yes, thank you. We ask you to do that. So I guess we'll check the notices for the village about whether there's a meeting in August, and we are adjourned.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh. Is there a motion to close the meeting?
Motion to close the hearing.
Sorry. All in favor? All right. I declare the meeting